going for Mr. James Petersen! But seriously though, like 10:30 a.m. and there's nobody in there? Oh my God, it's a magic trick in and of itself. Come on up, James. Oh, yes, you're right. There's a protocol. James doesn't prefer to wear shoes on stage, and I respect that choice. Hi, sir. It's my new Facebook friend, James Petersen.
Freud said that the first organ of intelligence is the mouth. A baby discovers the world by putting things into its mouth. I found this to be true and very useful as an adult for my dating life. When you kiss a woman, it must be magic. And that leads to other things. Kissing with intent leads to sex, and sex leads to sleep. Can you fall asleep entangled and wake up the next morning wanting more? Yes. Say amen, somebody. I had dated this woman for a year and a half, and she was perfect in each of those categories. But we had yet to take on the ultimate test of a relationship, something that inexplicably Freud never wrote about. Could we travel together? She had a business trip on the West Coast. She had never seen Yosemite, redwoods, or traveled the Coast Highway to Big Sur. Her son lived in San Francisco. I said, we'll do a trip. It was the middle of winter. What could go wrong? The trip went sideways on the very first day. Our flight was delayed for 3 hours, and we arrived in San Francisco at rush hour in pitch dark, and we had to drive 185 miles to Yosemite. My companion had one flaw. She likes to do a running commentary on my driving. Between Northwest Evanston and here, she will make 5 course corrections, audible calls. And we were facing 185 miles of this. The rain turned to sleet, and as we gained altitude, the sleet turned to snow on black ice, and still she made corrections. It's a straight, go faster. I was worried not only about making it to Yosemite, but being allowed into Yosemite. The park has a law. In the winter, you cannot enter the park without having chains. The rental company had not provided them, but it was the middle of the government shutdown. There were no rangers at the gate to check. We slid right through all the way to the majestic Yosemite Hotel. The next morning, dawn bright, sunshine, 40 degrees. We had the park to ourselves. And the joy of showing someone that you know is to see how they see it. And she just devoured the details. She took pictures of rocks, of waterfalls, of moss, and trees. She spent 20 minutes taking pictures of the bark on one redwood. Her camera ran out of batteries. I gave her mine and watched. And as the day grew cold, we watched mist from a rise from a meadow, and she took pictures, and it was beautiful, and it was magic. Day 3, we drove to San Francisco in a torrential downpour. There was less commentary, that or I had turned off my hearing aids. Her son lived in Marin County, and he had made reservations at Muir Woods to hike. He knew his mother had to see a redwood, but it was a government shutdown, and the park was closed. Trump was messing with my love life. Is this an impeachable offense? We instead hiked the Marin headlands, the hills above the Golden Gate Bridge. We saw a hawk floating in midair, and it plunged and took a field mouse, and she caught it on camera. She has lightning quick reflexes. Her son had done research and said if you go down the middle of California, you can find the oldest state park in California, and there's old growth trees there. And we did. We arrived just before sunset and stood inside of a 900-year-old tree. Did you know that if you fiddle with your camera, with your smartphone, you can put it on panorama, you can take a shot of the whole tree? She knew. We arrived in Carmel after dark. The next morning, we walked the beach under those beautiful cypress trees. And I had wanted to get to Big Sur for brunch, or maybe lunch, or maybe late lunch, but we were flexible. We had discovered we were loose travelers. And so we drove south. It was like an hour drive, winding curves, mist, rain. We stopped. We had lunch at Nepenthe. The word comes from the legendary drug for forgetfulness mentioned in the Odyssey, a poem about the dangers of travel. We pushed on south, and 25 miles later, we ran into a barricade that said, road closed, no detour. We had to turn around and drive back to Carmel. Some people would melt down at a moment like this, but we had learned that when something goes wrong, it leaves room for something to go right. And we drove north. The sun was low in the sky, the rain had lifted, and for 2 hours we chased rainbows. Literally, around every corner, a rainbow. We arrived in Carmel just in time to see an exquisite sunset on the beach where we had started the day. It was magic. Quick vote. Does she sound like a keeper?